I am constantly talking to my team about hiring for attitude. So I work with people from all over the world. Some come and intern with me, some work as assistants. And the number one thing I look for is attitude, because everything else can be taught. And as somebody who's dyslexic, as somebody who has worked in multiple industries, as somebody who has worked with multiple industries around leadership, improved performance, individual team, organizational development, I know that attitude is going to set somebody apart. So you can have the brightest person, you can have the most skilled person, and these things are valuable. But if they don't have the attitude of working with a team, with growing themselves, with figuring things out, if they don't have that kind of attitude, then everything else is going to be harder. And some people call it like growth mindset versus, I was going to say stuck mindset, but growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And while, yeah, that has a part to do with it, I would say it goes a step further than that. I want to work with people who have an attitude that they can figure things out. And yes, that's a growth mindset, but also when they can't figure things out, they can find a way forward. And I want to work with people who are trying their best. I want to work with people who are motivated, intrinsically motivated, so they want to do well because they want to do well. I want to work with people who are curious about the world and are curious about themselves. So with all this said, I'm constantly assessing attitude in any interview that I do. And I had this really lovely interview. I wasn't there, and somebody on my team was interviewing, and the person asked, how does Sheila do that in her work? And I was like, oh, learning opportunity here. So basically I was thinking about the fact that while I hire for attitude, most of what I train is skill. It's critical thinking, it's the capacity to solve problems together, and the capacity to figure out what supports are available. And I realized that actually I don't do a lot around attitude development. And so the researcher's brain in me decided to think about what kind of things research has told us is good for developing attitude, approach, well-being, all of those things. So I've come up with 3 things that must be done every day when you work in my team. And this includes me, I do these too. One is finding something to be grateful for that is different to the other days. So the research is kind of telling us that when you seek gratitudes, it's not necessarily the act of the gratitude itself, but the effort of seeking things to be grateful for that creates little pathways in your brain that has you more available to look for things to be grateful for, improving mood, but also more solution focused because you're developing that pathway in the brain. And we all have a negative bias as part of our survival, but we don't have like a positive bias. We don't have a natural inclination to look on the positive. So the gratitude is a piece of that I'm kind of focusing on. One is a random act of kindness. So this is important because I want a skilled team. I want to work with people who have a positive attitude, but I do not want to work with people who are stepping on other people to get ahead. That is just not what I'm about. I kind of believe the rising tide lifts all boats. I believe in inclusion, which is we can all succeed better together than apart. And so I want the people that work with me to develop their capacity to do kind acts simply for the sake of doing kind acts, not because they have something to gain, but because they have something to give. I want people thinking about abundance. I want people thinking about kindness. I want people thinking about being generous, being helpful, because that's kind of the foundations of what I've built my work on and my business on. So that's 2. So the third one is inclusion. And I was thinking about the fact that while a lot of inclusion is taught as a theory or as a should do, or from a political point of view, I want people I work with to be more effective at critically considering inclusion and the complexities of it. And how can I make that something that's alive every day? Well, then they have to learn something new about inclusion every day. And I don't give them any direction where to learn it. So I want to make sure that the people I work with are able to critically think about inclusion, are able to critique it appropriately, are able to integrate it, stretch their own mind, broaden and lessen their blind spots. And so inclusion is involved in every single day's daily development. So my daily development for me and my team, and moving forward until we have some data that says otherwise, or there's new evidence, or we find something more effective, is 3 things I want my team to do every day. I want one new learning about inclusion every day, or one act of kindness every day that isn't about being like personally getting ahead, but it's about making sure that we're gracious, about we're kind of sharing, considering other people, and then one thing to be grateful for every day, because that allows people to build their attitude towards giving, kindness, considering other people, developing critical thinking through the inclusion, and developing the pathway to be grateful for things and to consider things every day that we can be grateful for, even in the middle of the crap. Because some of our work, and you'll know this in your own work, sometimes every day isn't a good day, but every day contributes to the outcomes we're looking for, even the bad days. And so my team have a daily development with those 3 things now. And I use those 3 things as well. And already in a very short space of time, I am noticing myself being content more. There's a lot of work I've got to do in academia. There's loads I've got to do yet for my PhD. In my work, there's constant improvements. There's loads of things that aren't going to be solved, but we need to bring curiosity to and processes to. There's lots of work to be done. There's lots of things I can achieve in my career. There's lots of challenges. And all of those things can distract you and keep you going rather than coming back and appreciating where you are now, how you got here. And that there's probably a part of all of us that didn't think we could get to where we are today, regardless of where we are. Or that was so focused on getting here, we didn't think about how we were going to be here, how we were going to hold ourselves, what kind of attitude we were going to have, what kind of beliefs we were going to foster, what kind of feelings we were going to nurture, how we were going to share our success rather than like that kind of individualistic idea of success, which is just for me. How are we going to make sure that when we succeed, a rising tide lifts all boats? How do we make sure that we are lifting others with us? And this is not from some like soft place. If I was just succeeding independently and I didn't have a team of people around me and supports, I wouldn't be succeeding. And that goes for personal and professional. And the same is for all of us. In some way, I don't really believe we succeed alone. Yes, we are responsible for ourselves and have a lot to do, but I think we succeed together. And generally when we succeed together, it's more sustainable. And so the daily development is a way for me and my team to share improvements and steps forward. Now, you might not be able to introduce this into your workplace because it might be countercultural or it might seem a bit odd, but you can find subtle ways to introduce daily developments that help build the capacity that you need your team to have. And I would love to hear more, so put it in the comments, tag me, contact me on Twitter, pop me an email, details below, and let me know what kind of things you might be able to bring to life to foster an environment and a culture of development and progress, or of the kind of attitude that you need in your work to be able to succeed together and to progress forward. I'd love to hear, so let me know in the comments.